Hi everyone, welcome back to the Communication and Conflict YouTube channel promoting mindful communication, growth through conflicts. Alan Sharland here. I'm a mediator and a conflict coach and a trainer in those skills. And today's video is about rescuer. Rescuer syndrome, it's sometimes called. Sometimes it's described that we can have rescue fantasies or rescuer fantasies. And it's basically the idea that that we have a tendency to want to fix other people's problems for them, and often that can be very challenging on a personal level because we kind of think we're trying to make people better, but they're not responding in the way we want them to, and so we get very involved in their lives and we try to get them to do things that we think they should do for their own best interests. And basically we try to take over their problem for them. We try to rescue them from the difficulty that they're experiencing. And in mediation and conflict coaching, one of the most important things to be able to recognize is our tendency to do that. It's a tendency that we can often bring from our own personal life. So I want to kind of say up front, every one of us is likely to have a possibility of trying to be a rescuer with other people. And it will show up more in some situations than others. And so because people come to train to be mediators and conflict coaches, we need to ensure that they're able to recognize when that's happening and to learn practices which prevent it from coming out, to prevent it from being something where they think they've got to fix people's disputes rather than help people to fix their own disputes, to resolve their own conflicts in situations. So what I want to share today are the common kind of features of how rescuer shows up in our interactions with others, and the ways in which as mediators and conflict coaches we communicate and practice and develop a mindfulness about how we're doing that and what we're feeling inside when we're dealing with people who have a problem, to help us to keep the rescuer out of the situation. But you can't turn off the wish to be a rescuer. It's probably, I don't know that it's present in everyone, but I've not come across anyone who's not had an element of it within themselves, including myself. But it's important in many support situations that we recognize it, and whether that's true in a personal relationship, it's much harder to switch off, or what does I say, you can't switch it off, but to be aware of and to try to minimize our rescuing in a personal relationship, particularly where actually things have become quite difficult. But it's also really important that we don't try to rescue in our work context as well, because what rescuer tends to cause is a dependency relationship, because it's where one person fixes another person's problem and that person doesn't see that they actually do have the capacity to fix things for themselves. So without being able to kind of recognize that they, being supported in recognizing that they have that capacity, they keep coming back to the person who fixed them, thinking that they will always be able to fix them, and so a dependency relationship ensues. And I would say that's true in many of our social support structures and processes and organizations, that there isn't a consciousness of where actually people are being rescued rather than helped to fix things for themselves. We tend to kind of give a pill or give a fix or give a leaflet, and with the aim of that being the answer to their difficulty, instead of helping people to think, well, what can you do that might help you to be more healthy? What can you do that might help you in this difficult relationship with the other person? And help them to think through and create their own answers, which would be to not rescue, but to support people in empowering themselves to take things forward. But often our kind of immediate response can be to give a fix. And so being able to recognize where we're doing that and where it means actually we're creating more difficulty rather than helping is an important thing. So I'm making this as a clear distinction between whether, if it's on a workplace situation, people come sometimes for clear advice, but that's them taking steps for themselves. They come to find out, what's the form I need to do this. So we say, okay, that's the form, that's it. They take it off and fill it in for themselves. If they want a piece of equipment for a certain job and we know what the best equipment is, they come to us, they ask us, they take it away. So they're doing it for themselves and they're drawing upon our help, but we're not trying to fix things for them. We're not saying, not only am I going to give you the form, but I'm going to go away and fill it in for you as well, because you look like the kind of person who can't do it for themselves. Or not only am I going to give you the equipment, I'm going to go and do it for you as well, because I don't think you're capable of using the equipment, or something like that. So we kind of presume that people need us to do things for them without it being their choice. So we start to take over their difficulty. We start to presume that they don't have the capacity for themselves. So we move to what I would call a parent-child relationship with people. We presume that they're not capable, so we try to fix them. And as I say, it's a very common thing. I mean, to recognize it within ourselves ultimately is very healthy, both for ourselves and for the other person, and for our relationship with that other person, because it respects them as someone who's capable, and it means we're not taking that kind of quite patronizing view towards them, and it means therefore our relationship is more about kind of one on an equal basis, an adult basis, than one where we're seen as their savior. And so therefore in time they keep coming back to us for more and more, because we've not helped them to recognize that they're capable of fixing things for themselves, and we've not changed that perception, because we keep fixing them, we keep giving them answers, when actually in time we won't feel able to keep doing that. So the rescuer syndrome can actually become quite an unhealthy thing if it's allowed to continue, and if it's not recognised, then obviously it's more likely to continue to happen. So what I want to try to point out today are just simple ways in which our rescuer shows itself, just so that hopefully it gives you a chance to kind of think, well, yeah, do I do that or don't I do that? And in a situation where I feel I'm always kind of, this person keeps coming to me with their problems, so why do they keep coming to me? There's a risk we can externalize it onto them and say, oh well, it's something wrong with them. Sometimes I hear coaches talk about their clients and say, these people aren't going away and doing what we've talked about in the session. And sometimes actually when they talk about how their relationships with clients go, it very much is as if they simply set tasks and expect people to go off and do them, without there being a sense that actually the tasks and the decisions have been created by the client, so that they have an ownership of what it is they need to do, and it just becomes what the coach says to do, in which case actually it's very unlikely that there's a sense of ownership, which makes it far less likely the person will go away and do it. But instead of the coach looking at their own approach to their client, there can be a kind of a dismissiveness towards many of their clients, saying, only 10% ever go away and do something. Well, I would be puzzled as to why that would be so, if they've created the ideas for themselves with the assistance of the coach, because then they do genuinely own and recognize that it's in their interest to do it. But where the approach of the coach is to say, okay, I'm the expert, you've come to me for coaching, I'm going to give you a list of things to do, I'm going to set you tasks, I'm going to set you deadlines, I'm going to tell you, what your stepping stones are towards those goals, etc. You've just got to go away and do it. It's not a particularly kind of adult relationship. It's a parent-child relationship. And in a way, what I've just described is true of other types of relationship, whether it's a personal relationship we might have with someone, and they are talking about a difficulty they've got, and we've come up with all these great ideas of what they should do, and we've pointed out all the things they haven't done that they should have done, or we've given them ideas of what they could do because that's what we would do, and we've not really listened to them and given them a chance to just talk it through and think through for themselves what would be the best for them to do. We've immediately jumped in with our fix, and that could be a parent with a child, an actual parent with their actual child, taking that kind of "I know best, you go away and do it" kind of approach, rather than supporting their child in developing their own creativity to create their own answers. It could be with a professional service, perhaps in social work, perhaps in teaching, perhaps in a healthcare professional, where the person just comes, looks for a fix and goes away, but then keeps coming back for more and more fixes, rather than looking into what might help them to become more healthy. So the relationship, it's kind of it's two sides. There's two sides to it. It's if the person providing support is rescuing, then it means the other person's going to keep coming back for more because they become dependent on the fix instead of being supported to create their own answers, in which case they may never need to come back for help again. So the ways in which that shows up just simply in our communication, is that someone might share a difficulty with us. They may tell us about a problem, and the most important thing that we can do is obviously just to listen to them without interrupting, without jumping in with our fix, but to notice, are we wanting to jump in with our fix? Have we got our cogs wheeling in the background thinking they should do this, they should do that, oh, they haven't done this, they need to do that? In which case we're not really listening, we're just analysing, ready to fix them. And instead of, when they have finished speaking, that we come in with all those fixes, we just say back to them what they've said. So that it gives them a chance to kind of hear themselves as if they're listening to themselves, and they're thinking for themselves, well, if I was that person, I'd do this. Actually, yeah, I've just thought I could do that. And all we're doing is saying back to them what they've said, so they get a chance to understand themselves better, to hear what they've said, to recognise how they're expressing themselves, to recognise what they're saying about their problem. And often they'll be able to come up with their own answers quite quickly anyway, just by that simple act of listening to people. But our tendency can be quite often to kind of simply respond with fixes and answers and opinions, rather than to just help the person to kind of be listened to give them space to reflect on what they've said. Another thing that sometimes is suggested as a kind of a professional response is to do what's called reframing what the person has said, as if we think we know a better way of them saying it, and by us saying it back to them in that different way, it's somehow magically going to fix their situation for them. But for me, the lack of recognition in that is that it's not the person who's chosen to reframe it, it's us deciding it for them. And so immediately we're taking away their ownership of their situation, and we're making it into our way of seeing things and thinking that it's better than their way of seeing things and saying things. So that's fixing again, to do that. Rather than help people to reflect on what they're saying and how they've said it, we think that actually our taking it over and changing how they say it is going to fix it for them. And I'm always a little concerned when I hear that suggested as actually a professional practice, that we say back to people something differently, we reframe it. And even if we don't do that and we've listened really well to people, one of the things that can often happen is we then kind of put our fixes across in the form of closed questions. And these are both things, the listening and summarising back in the words of the speaker, and then the avoidance of using closed questions is one of the things that we train people in when we're training people to be mediators. Because if someone tells me about their problem and I say, oh, have you tried this, or have you tried that, or I wouldn't do that, I would do this instead, we are basically fixing people. Now, as I said earlier, it may not be that it may be that sometimes people literally do want us to tell them what they should do. But as long as we're clear with them that it's just what we would do, it may not work for them, rather than for them to get the belief that actually we're going to tell them what to do. Because otherwise, if that's the relationship we develop, we can pretty much guarantee they're going to keep coming back to us, because they're going to see us as the rescuer, and we're buying into that by doing it. So if people do just want us to tell them what to do, okay, we can do it, but does it mean they're going to keep coming back to us? And how long can we sustain that for and feel okay about it? Because in time it will become too much. So to not get involved in being a rescuer, we can ask people questions. What is it you want in this situation? What's meant you haven't been able to get that in the past? What might you be able to do differently? How could you go about doing that? What if that doesn't happen? So all questions to help them just to think through what they're wanting and how they might go about dealing with things. But at no time are we using closed questions which say, have you tried this? Could you do that? Would it be a good idea to do that? Or giving opinions like, oh no, I don't think you should do that. I think you should do this. Which means effectively, again, we're taking over their difficulty. Now, as I say, I want to keep this clear distinction. If someone comes to us for advice on, okay, what's the form I need to fill in for this, then we say, okay, that's the form. But if we look at them and think, oh, this person doesn't look like they can fill in forms, and we start filling it in for them, then the next time they want a form, they'll expect that as well. Or there's a strong risk that they will. Or it may be that our colleague who doesn't do more than is necessary is expected to fill in a form because we did previously, and the person says we're not doing our job properly because the last person filled the form in for me as well as just giving me the form. So it causes that kind of difficulty. We kind of rescue people and do for them things that they can do for themselves. So that can happen in a professional context, it can happen in a personal context. We may kind of, clean up after a relative because we think they need to have their place cleaner than we would judge it to be necessary. That we judge it to be at the moment. So we go into someone's place, we think, oh, it's not looking clean enough, so we clean up for them, thinking that we're doing them a good turn, but actually perhaps they feel quite uncomfortable because we're taking over their situation, and we're suggesting to them that their standards aren't good enough for us. And so we're doing it thinking we're doing them a favour, or that they need us to do it for them. And actually we're just rescuing them from a problem that we think they have, where they may be fine with how their place is. And that could be a metaphor for other things as well. There could be other situations that they're struggling with, or they may not even say they're struggling. We may think they're struggling, and so we then do things with the intention of helping them, but they may not have felt they had a problem in the first place. So we're bringing all these things in where we're assuming people aren't capable or need help when they don't. And it comes out in our actions and our words. So someone might just share a problem with us and they just want to be able to vent it, they just want to share it. But instead of us just giving space for them to listen, we then come back with, well, why don't you do this? And have you tried that? And, oh, well, when I had that problem, I did this. Why don't you try that? And when we do that, quite often we don't recognise that actually we never had that problem because we're not them. And we're just projecting onto them what our experience was and expecting them to act in the same way as we would, which kind of implicitly suggests we think they're not doing it correctly. So we're rescuing them, we're thinking they're not capable, we think they're doing it wrong, rather than just giving space to people to support them in creating their own answers in a situation. So what I would say is you will know if you're being a rescuer, because you'll be frustrated with someone who has a difficulty that they've shared with you, but they're not doing what you think they should do, and you're getting frustrated. So it's like you're taking over their problem for them. They may have good reasons for not doing what you've suggested, and you may get frustrated with them for not doing what you suggested, but they may not have expected you to get so involved in it in the first place. And so your frustration is your own frustration from your rescuer that people aren't doing what you think they should. It's not them that is the problem. It's your rescuer that is the problem, because you presumed that they needed your advice and input, when perhaps actually they just wanted to share and be supported in thinking through their own answers. So that's what I would say. Those are the things that I would say indicate rescuer. First of all, that frustration, or that kind of tension that we feel inside when we hear someone's problem, because they're not doing what we think they should. So we've over-identified with their situation. We think they should do something different because we think they're not doing it right. And so we get frustrated with them. And in time, we then become dismissive of them because they're not doing it as we think they should. So in none of that are we actually supporting them in talking through their problem, and we're not supporting them in creating their own answers and trusting that their answer for themselves is much better than our answer for them. And the ways in which it manifests in our communication is that we will summarize back to, we either won't summarize back to people, we'll just come straight in with a fix, or if we do summarize back, we'll try to change how people are saying it because we think they're saying it wrong. And then the other way is we then use closed questions to try to suggest to people what we think they should do. And as I say, in a professional situation where actually that's our job, someone comes to us and says, what do I need for this? What widget do I need? What form do I need? What equipment do I need? What's the law on this, etc. Of course, that's our job. But if we're stepping over the mark and then getting involved in whether the person is using what we say correctly, or we're trying to take over doing it for them, then maybe once or twice that won't be a problem. But if we don't recognize we're doing it and we keep doing it, people will keep coming back to us with their problems, and we'll get frustrated because we'll think, well, they're quite capable of doing it themselves, why aren't they doing it? But actually it's because we've tried to fix them ourselves instead of trusting that they have the capacity to do it for themselves. So that's rescuer. That's how we know that we're doing it. Those are the signs that we're being a rescuer. If that's something that you've experienced, please pop a comment below. If you think this is something that other people might want to hear about, if you think other people are prone to being a rescuer, or if you are being a rescuer, then please like the video and share it as well. And also please don't forget to subscribe if you think you'd like to see more videos like this about different aspects of how we respond to difficult or conflict situations. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.